I'm pretty sure that it was EA who inspired the yearly release money spinning sports game idea. Seemingly, all you need to do is create a visually appealing game around a popular sport, and then each year add a few minor features, casually tweak some of the old ones, and ignore all of the critical feedback your player base provided on the previous release, and you will have yourself an EA-inspired money spinning machine. If that isn't enough money though, simply overcharge for minor DLC content, and if you can find a way to get away with it, introduce some loot box systems, and you can churn out meaningless updates year upon year with hardly any thought or effort on your part, whilst making millions. Well, Frontier hasn't quite worked out how to introduce loot boxes yet, but watch this space.
Copy.
Without a doubt, F1 Manager's 2024's biggest selling point is the ability to create your own team, and yet the game still feels shallower than a puddle, and better suited to being a mobile game, watch this space for that to release soon, rather than an actual management sim for a PC. F1 is the pinnacle of racing, where 22 cars can qualify within half a second of each other. 1/100th of a second is an awful lot in F1, and yet the controls, inputs and feedback that we get in this game is far closer to putting the right shape in the correct hole than actually accurately calculating when best to swap to inters, and the interface feels like you're playing on a web page that was built before 1990. Compare it to games like Motorsport Manager and you will see what I mean. The Create Your Own Team feature is something which really should have been released last year, and it is the only area where any real positivity is justified. I will discuss that in detail in a moment, but first let's quickly discuss the other features before I rip this game to shreds. Race Replay is a challenge mode which is developed retrospectively as the real F1 season pans out, and it gives managers the opportunity to effectively rewrite history. It is actually kind of enjoyable, I have to be honest, and a nice distraction from the often monotonous and quite boring career mode.
Yeah, I think there's a puncture in damage.
We're checking, Lance, we're checking.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I cannot pass.
Within races, we now see a lot of mechanical failures, some of which are only temporary. We see punctures and a lot of pit delays, plus other incidents that can and do keep things quite varied and somewhat interesting. So whilst I applaud this, I also have to ask, where are the track limit warnings? Where are the penalties for speeding in the pit lane or for an unsafe release? There's a lot still missing from the game. And then there are the bugs, my favourite one being the pit crew training, which will never ever improve jack capability no matter what training you give them, or the AI voices telling you how much traffic there is out there when they're completely alone out on the track. Mentality is another new feature and an example of something which has been poorly thought out and badly implemented, a feature which I will discuss much more in a moment. And then we've also got affiliate drivers, another wonderful example of a shallow feature being added for no reason whatsoever. There appears to be no scope here at all, nothing of value that you can actually engage with or expand upon. Much more on them in a moment too. All of these little feature updates just feel like a crappy band-aid has been carelessly placed over a massive bruise, and they're not really paying any attention to the fact that there appears to be internal bleeding. So let's talk about creating my own team. At first, it was a pretty exciting experience. I appreciated the option to set the difficulty level, and of course, as F1 is the hardest racing platform to succeed in, I set everything to maximum difficulty. And believe me when I say it is very challenging indeed, as you will start with very little money, barely any facilities at all, and in order to try and keep costs down, I hired the cheapest drivers I could find. Unfortunately, the game auto-filled my affiliate drivers, and they were bloody expensive. More on them in a second. So it started off pretty well. Admittedly, the car livery system is a bit crap, especially as you cannot seemingly have different colour combos for the wheels or the driver colours, but you can kind of create a logo and a theme of sorts. So it's not good, but it is there. The first thing, though, that really set my blood boiling was the fact that I noticed that my brand new racing team's collective mentality was negative before we had even started a race. A brand new team, with theoretically the slowest of all the cars on the track and a negative mindset, has absolutely zero chance of success. I would have fired the odd few naysayers in the game if it would have let me. Turns out you can't actually have any role empty. But the entire team started with a negative attitude. Every single one of them. Now, mentality, which is a new feature, must be one of the most detrimental aspects because, in short, it's completely unrealistic, and yet it affects everything from contract negotiations to track performance. A competitive quality car on paper in the hands of a fast driver in a bad mood is just like watching Massive Strap-On having a temper tantrum because he didn't get enough sleepy time last night. Undeterred though, I pressed on, and we had some good results in the first 3 or 4 races actually, thanks to other cars having DNFs, and our ability to just keep going was enough for us to actually finish sort of 13th and 15th quite often. Albeit, our car was, travelling miles behind the next slowest car. So I quickly set about designing and bringing in new parts to improve the car and ended up with a car which was 10th fastest top speed overall. I actually managed to get that up to 8th fastest at one point. We were 10th for DRS, 17th, 15th and 11th in the slow, medium and fast corners, 15th, 16th and 20th for dirty air, tyre and engine cooling, and we even managed to get the 3rd fastest pit stop in one of the races. So you might expect that we were starting to claw our way back into contention, but no. Now, whilst I admit my drivers were the cheapest possible drivers out there, and they were very slow, they were much slower at the beginning than the other cars by a good 2 or 3 seconds, but they remained 2 or 3 seconds slower than the other cars despite all of these upgrades. They were even considerably slower than my 2 affiliate drivers, and I know this because I allowed my affiliate drivers to drive in practice 1, and they were 1 to 2 seconds faster than my number 1 and number 2 drivers. So the logical thing to do was enter into contract negotiations with my affiliate drivers, which was not the most pleasant experience, I have to admit. And finally, after a lot of toing and froing and arguing and stropping about, I managed to swap out my least impressive driver, at great expense to myself, for one of the affiliates. And to my absolute surprise, he then proceeded to drive slower than my second car, despite having all of the upgrades on his car and previously having been 2 seconds quicker than both of my drivers. So I think it's fair to say that the balance of AI driver performance is completely out of whack. It makes no sense whatsoever, and the mentality feature is just another example of a shallow, poorly thought out and badly implemented piece of garbage, which is pretty much how I see the entirety of this game, to be honest. But what other option is there? There's Open Wheel Motorsport 2, which needs a lot more work in my humble opinion, and whilst Motorsport Manager has that fantastic depth, it is dated and visually far less appealing. So unless you actually want to be behind the wheel, F1 Manager 2024 is the best F1 racing management game on offer today, sadly enough. But it's not a simulator at all, not even close. It's been dumbed down to the most ridiculous level, and it has the most horrible UI I have ever seen. This game has no depth at all, and they seem to have no intention of increasing the depth or improving that UI. Maybe next year they might add the ability to change driver names or upload your own liveries or something. For me, the most positive thing about F1 Manager 2024, other than allowing you to finally create your own team, is that on the hardest settings, the game is actually super difficult. It's a real challenge, but it is not realistic at all. You can improve your car as much as you like and spend a lot of money on buying certain facilities and upgrades that are meant to make your team and your drivers happier, but it will not have the desired effect, and you will still be 2.5 seconds off the pace, even though your car is technically, on paper, right in the middle of the pack. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care. Goodbye for now.